The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today for Affinity's webinar series. My name is Ron Warman. I'm a partner on the document management team here at Affinity. And today we're going to talk about the new feature within NetDocuments called folder packs. As part of this presentation, I'm actually going to go through pretty quickly in a PowerPoint, just a small number of slides, and then we're going to be pretty daring today and we're going to do a live demonstration of the feature. So for starters, obviously our theme here is a reimagining workspace designs and how folder packs can help that out. In our first topic here, we're going to talk about the legacy approach to workspaces within NetDocuments. We are then going to give a brief folder packs overview to talk about what the feature is and what it's expected to do. As I mentioned, we're going to give that live demo so we can see the product in action and see how it can be leveraged within our own designs. And then we're going to take a look forward and see how, what the roadmap is and how this can impact us down the road. So again, we appreciate you joining us today. We're just going to take 30 quick minutes here and kind of power through this topic and hope you can gain something from it. So starting with the legacy approach for workspace design, the age-old question within NetDocuments was always filters versus folders. And that was the basic idea that within workspaces, we can choose to use filters for organizing our content, which are basically search-based structures that we can still use to apply metadata. Or would we use folders? And with folders, we can basically have kind of the traditional folder structure that we might be used to from legacy document management systems, or even Windows network folders. And in some cases, as things evolved, you might combine the two. And so you might take a filtered approach, but then build folders within those same workspaces to give you some other organizational structures. We always talk about the beauty of NetDocuments is its dynamic nature and its ability to accommodate different types of users. And as part of that, it's the idea that filters and folders could coexist and users can work with the way that suits them, leveraging either approach. And then the last item here, just in terms of the legacy approach, we're going to talk about the challenges that kind of come back with the legacy approach to workspace designs. And so here you can see I've got a pretty basic workspace here, just identifying what a workspace using filters would look like. Again, the idea with filters is that I could save to a filter, I could inherit that metadata, but I could also simply profile documents and they would show within there because filters are really search-based objects. The second example we have is the same exact structure, but in this case, we're using a folder approach. And again, once again, I can save to a folder. I can inherit metadata from that folder. I could potentially, if I turned on automatic foldering, also profile a document and it would show within a folder structure. The difference being with folders here is that I could then start to create subfolders as an end user. Within filters, there's no ability to create any sort of substructure, but within the folder structure, I could build that out. So for those users that are used to that visual hierarchical view of their structures and like to kind of build things out that way, they could do that, as opposed to the folks that prefer to search and kind of rely on the quick search type of concepts. And then as we evolve this concept, you can see on the right-hand side here, we've got the idea that I've got my filters, and then I've actually added an appeal folder in this particular workspace. And so you can see that's kind of combining the two approaches where we're basically leveraging them. I can still build out a folder structure. And as we highlight here, anything that's saved to the folders, as long as it's assigned whatever our organizing attribute is, most often doc type, it would still show within the filters. But now we're basically taking advantage of both filters and folders and allowing those two concepts to coexist. So what are some of the challenges? One of the first challenges we always have when it comes to workspace design is the idea that we're likely trying to align with a source system, oftentimes a time billing and an accounting system. How in most cases, matters being stored and categorized in that system, and how does that translate into the document management system to be assigned to a particular workspace type? Because oftentimes we're working within practice groups, we're helping them to design and develop their working structures, and then we have to go back to the source system that's going to feed this information into NetDocuments and determine how we're going to map it. So that's oftentimes the challenge of aligning two different systems and a convention in one to meet the other. The next challenge here is what happens when that mapping or designation is incorrect. Maybe somebody misentered something on an opening form, and now a matter was opened with the wrong matter type, and that translated into the incorrect workspace template within NetDocuments. In most cases, unless you have some sort of third-party tool or custom development, you're somewhat going back and recreating that workspace with the new type and the new structure to make sure that you kind of remove what shouldn't be there and appropriately assign it to the structure that should. So, there's always that challenge of, I've worked so hard to come up with my designs. I've worked to map my source system so that I feed the right values into NetDocuments. But on intake, if that type is incorrect, that could mean that I get the wrong workspace design as I'm working within NetDocuments. Okay. The next item, the third bullet here, is the multi-level structures. And how do we achieve those? Since you're not able to create a workspace template, we talked about filters versus folders. We know that filters, you cannot create any sort of substructure. But even with folders at the workspace template level, historically, we could not create another level to that. We can have that first level of folders, but we could not create a second or third level through the workspace templates. And if we wanted to achieve that, and many times we saw clients wanting to do that, is have basically a more elaborate structure, they would have to rely on a third-party tool to build those workspaces, or potentially build their own custom development process that would create that structure for them. Or, as this fourth bullet kind of suggests, you could just leave it to end users to create ad hoc folders as they work and create what's appropriate for them. But once we get into that, we start to get into the inconsistencies that we could find. Will they create the same folders in the same approach every time? Will there be typos? Will there be, they make security or metadata changes on those that make it inconsistent and somewhat problematic? And so maintaining these structures could obviously be a challenge there, especially if we're relying on users to manually do that each time they're working within a particular matter or a workspace. So what does folder packs do for us? So folder packs provides us with a multi-level structuring of our workspaces. It's the idea that now I can go beyond that first level of folders and I can build structures that go many levels deep. There is going to be a phased release. So the first portion of this was released in October, and that's the ability to apply folder packs to workspace templates such that any new workspace that gets created or refreshed would have those folder packs applied to them. In 2021, they will be releasing additional features, including the ability for first admins to apply folder packs to existing workspaces, and then for end users to apply the folder packs to existing workspaces. So at that point, putting the control in the end user's hands to be able to adjust workspace structures to include appropriate folder packs. And as we're going to see in a minute here, folder packs do have a separate admin page and sections within the NetDocs web interface. And the last item here, I wrote that it's free. Obviously it's part of your subscription, but this is not an add-on feature in terms of having to pay any additional fees for this. This is built right into your core NetDocuments platform. It's added right off the bat, and so for those folks that would go and check their admin section as of October, they would have started to see the folder packs options available there to use. You didn't necessarily have to use them. If you never looked, you might not see it, but as we see, that's out there for every customer at this point. Again, kind of highlighting the power of the platform that they basically released the feature and the next day it's out there and available for everyone. What are some of the more granular details about folder packs? The first question there is basically the idea that maybe there are unlimited levels. I haven't identified any sort of limitation or restriction on how many levels we can create. You'll see in some of the examples I've created, we go pretty deep, and I've yet to hit any sort of restriction. Not that we're encouraging to create that many levels, but I haven't seen any sort of hard and fast restriction there. You can apply one or more per template. So we can create numerous folder packs, and on a given workspace template, we can apply more than one of those. So I'm going to show you that example in a little bit here in terms of how that's applied. You must have unique top-level folders. So if we start to create folder structures within our workspace template and within varying folder packs, we cannot have conflicting top-level folders there. The interface will actually tell us there's a conflict and won't allow us to apply them to the same structure. Metadata and security are inherited from the workspace. So as these folder packs are created as top-level folders and built within the workspace, it inherits the metadata and security that's applied at the workspace level. And then, as I mentioned, this first phase, folder packs are applied upon creation of the workspace or via performing a workspace refresh, we would also see them added. So we can implement folder packs and go back and update existing workspaces It's not going to be by the end user through the optional adjustments that they can be able to make. They'll be coming next year. But we do have the ability, if a user has the ability to perform a workspace refresh, they would be able to add the folder packs to that particular workspace. Okay. Alrighty, so we're going to jump out here and do a demo. I love this cartoon. Basically, we're promoting something that may not even be there. Here, we're going to actually do it live to prove that this feature is there and available. So let me go ahead and get into NetDocuments. A couple things I'll highlight here. As I log into NetDocuments, we highly suggest that in your NetDocuments, if you don't have it, that you rely on single sign-on to give you a better level of security controls. And on top of that, multi-factor authentication. So just one of the best practices we can see is as you're protecting your data, going through the extra levels of control to work within NetDocuments and protect your authentication. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and show some sample workspaces. So I've got client 01, I've got matter 01, and so as you can see here, this is our sample workspace where we're using that filter approach. Okay, I'm going to go separately to matter 02. And in this case, as I showed in the screenshot, this is the folder approach, where I basically have workspaces with folders. And then my third example, just to kind of show you what they are to start, is the idea that I can have the combination where I've got filters and I also have a folder. And so this kind of just shows our concepts from the legacy approach that we talked about here. And so I'm going to now go into the admin page. And so when I go into the cabinet administration page, you're going to see that on the top here, I have folder pack. And so I'm going to go ahead and click on folder pack. And so this is the separate administrative page that I mentioned. We basically have the ability at this level to start creating folder packs. And it's a very straightforward approach. I can create a folder pack. I can call it what I want, up to 1,000 characters. I can create it. Now that's just the name of the folder pack. Now it wants me to start creating folders within. So if I said level 1, you'll see that I can designate. At this point, I only have the top levels to select, and I can choose apply, and then I can continue to add folders. And on each subsequent folder, I can choose whether or not I want it to be a subfolder of an existing folder, another top level folder, or where I want to build that. So I'm going to just, at this point, choose apply. And now at this point, I've created my demo folder pack. I click apply. My changes have been applied there. I'm going to go back up to the folder pack level. And just to kind of show you a couple of concepts here, when I look at this test folder pack, this is the example I mentioned where I've basically gone, I forget if it's 15 or 16 levels deep. You'll notice that I basically have all my structure here. And it's going. And so I went 12 levels deep on this one. And that's, at that point I stopped. But just to kind of show you the idea, again, we're not recommending that you go and create this elaborate of a structure. But the idea that you can build out whatever levels of structure you think are appropriate, it now comes available within the folder packs. Okay. So just to show you a couple of the folder packs that I've already built, I've got a folder pack called Discovery. And as I look within that, I have Discovery folder with depositions, examinations, interrogatories, and requests for production. I've also created one called Document Production. And so within Document Production, I've got _ to be reviewed, privileged, and then produce. So the idea that I'll have content I'm reviewing, and I'll either designate that it is to not be produced because it's privileged content, or it needs to be produced. And so I've got that structure that's there and available for me. So again, that's the folder pack admin console section here. And you can see it's pretty straightforward, pretty easy to work with. But that's where we would create and maintain the folder packs themselves. When it comes time to apply them to workspaces, I'm going to go back up to my cabinet level here. And I go back to define workspace template, which is the same that it's always been. Okay. And so within here, you'll see I've got my workspace templates. And so I've got one that's family law, and I've got correspondence, notes and research. Down below, you'll notice there's a folder pack section, and there isn't a folder pack applied to this particular workspace template. I then have litigation, and I have no folder packs applied to that one. I just simply have 2 filters. I've got litigation with appeal. This was my filter plus a folder concept there. But then I get into the workspace templates that have folder packs applied. So I have litigation with discovery. And so notice down below, I now have the discovery folder pack showing there. If I actually just simply go to add folder pack, you'll notice I have it toggled on for discovery, and I could have selected multiple. So I'll cancel that one for a second. If I go to litigation with discovery and document production, in this case, I've turned on both document production and discovery. And then if I look here and I have litigation with just document production, I've turned on just the document production as well, okay? But you can see all of my available folder packs are there and can be selected, so I can assign them to a workspace, okay? So the key
Hey,
here,
Ron,
yes.
this is Karen. You do have one question out there. Can folder packs be applied to collaboration spaces as well?
No, these are right now limited to the workspace templates themselves. So within the workspace structure, we get a top level folder that would be built out. It is separate.
Okay, great.
It is separate from the collaboration spaces.
Great, thanks, Ron.
Sure, no problem. All right, so the key thing to keep in mind here is I've got litigation with discovery and document production, and I've got litigation with document production. So as I go back, now I'm going to just, for my own ease of use, I'm going to copy that here. And now I'm going to go back to my profile attributes. Okay. And so the way workspace templates are managed is we basically rely on the type column within our matter table, or whichever our workspace attribute might be, and that drives the workspace template that's being used. So again, if I go back and I look back at my first workspace, this particular 01.001 is simply right now litigation. If I come in here and I choose to make that, first things first, I'm going to just choose litigation with discovery. Choose save. I'm going to now come back. I'm going to refresh this workspace. And now you'll notice discovery is now available there on this particular workspace. And so I've got that folder pack applied for me. The end user didn't have to do anything manually to create those structures. It simply just created it for me. If I go back and I change my type and include discovery and document production as my type, which maps to our template that include both of them, and I come back and I refresh again, you'll notice I now have both folder packs applied. So if this particular litigation took on an aspect of discovery, I've built out that folder structure. If it takes on an aspect of document production, I've got that folder structure for me as well. And users can now start to use these structures to work within this workspace and to kind of manage their content and their workflow there. So again, pretty straightforward. We're still using the type column that we use for assigning workspace templates, and we make adjustments to that type column, and it will then apply to the workspace. And so if this was a brand new workspace, these would have been there from the very beginning, but I could technically update an existing workspace, refresh it, and get these structures. Going forward in 2021, the idea will be that from the web interface directly on the workspace, there would potentially be a mechanism here where an end user could come in and basically assign folder packs and choose that on their own. And so that's what's coming in the new year. And so we're going to talk about a little bit that in terms of what it means for us. So I'm going to pause right there. That's just a quick demo that I did. I want to see if any other questions came in terms of anything I showed there. I think it was pretty quick and hopefully straightforward enough that people are able to follow. But were there any questions?
There is one more question. It says, can you apply different doc type filters to subfolders within the folder pack, or do they all need to have the same doc type filter applied?
Yeah, so good question. And this was one of the very first questions we asked as we saw folder packs were being released. So as it stands right now, I mentioned that the folder packs themselves will only inherit the metadata and security from the workspace. And so in this case, I don't have a document type assigned at the workspace level. So if I come into discovery and I look at all information, I've got my client, I've got my matter, but I don't currently have a doc type being assigned for me automatically here. This is simply just inheriting whatever metadata and security is at the workspace level and apply it. Now, obviously, once it's created, you can assign whatever doc types you want it within the structure. But one of the enhancements on the roadmap is for you to be able to apply custom metadata and security to these structures so that if you wanted to have discovery with sub-doc types or separate doc types for each of the folders, whatever that might be, that would be able to be applied to it as part of the folder pack. But as it stands, the folder packs get created and simply inherit the metadata that's applied at the workspace level. So there won't be any additional metadata unless it's assigned at the workspace, and then you can go back after the fact and potentially update those. Okay.
Great, that was the only other question we had.
All right, so let me go back here, jump back into my presentation, and let's just talk about what this means going forward. All right, so we talked earlier about the idea that there's that whole process of mapping your time billing and accounting system potentially to workspace templates, finding out which fields you would use and how you would map them and any logic that's being applied. The idea that you might have some potential mistakes initially upon entry that would then trigger the wrong workspace template. So to me, what this means going forward is that you have an approach to consider where you really simplify your workspace templates and the dependency on that source system mapping, and potentially create workspaces with more generic workspace structures and allow the users to pick as appropriate what folder packs get applied to them. And so obviously right now, in this first release, the end user piece to that isn't there yet natively. It's the idea that in 2021, once the end user piece comes, you could have a very simple structure to start. You can kind of take the entry piece out of it, the mapping piece out of it, and then just allow the user to pick what's appropriate and add those particular folder pack structures to it. So it could greatly reduce the burden of how you manage and map these values coming out of the source systems. The second item here is the idea that it's a user-driven and a very consistent approach, right? So it's no longer end users having to go in and manually add folder, add folder, add folder. Are they assigning metadata? Are they changing security? What are they doing with it? They basically have those template structures available to them that they can quickly add to a workspace and not have to necessarily go back and do anything manually themselves. So as long as it's a consistent approach, it allows for that user-driven process to be very consistent and reliable. Again, as that question was raised, the idea that custom metadata and security aren't there today, but that is on the roadmap to be delivered. And so we're eagerly waiting for that capability to basically say, we can now go ahead and apply additional metadata and security throughout the folder pack structure and get even more somewhat complex with our designs, but allowing that flexibility to build these structures, apply the metadata so that users are getting that inheritance of the metadata and manage that appropriately. And then the other piece that's pretty exciting is the idea that as folder packs evolve, the potential to integrate with things like set builder, ND thread, workspace security manager, and some of the other features in the NetDocuments platform to continue to build out the workflow concepts. We oftentimes are hearing people, all the document management functionality is great. What about expanding so that we have more elaborate workflow capabilities for tracking things like tasks and the life cycle of the document, everything else. And that's what we're looking towards as we start to build out folder packs and start to drive that process as we leverage the other components, and it kind of becomes that full circle of life cycle of all the management of that content within the workflow aspects as well. So it's a very exciting concept there as these features start to build and start to tie together. Okay, so a couple of
Ron?
Yes.
We did have two more questions that came in. Is this a good time to ask those?
Perfect. Yes.
Great. So the first one is a little bit long. It says, we require every document to be assigned a doc type. If we use the folder pack, then the document would be in the folder pack, and then a doc type filter would also be created. Would the filter show up under the folder or at the higher level?
Yeah, so what you would basically see, let me actually just escape out of here a second and go back to this concept here, is what you're basically saying is if I save into the depositions folder, I have document type required, I would now basically have the document within the depositions folder with document type, and then it would also come back into a folder with a filter with the appropriate doc type. So yes, you would see the content in both locations. And if we went back to that concept we showed earlier, this particular concept is not new in terms of mixing filters and folders. So if we look at this concept here, if we were to save something into the appeal folder but apply correspondence or notes and research as the doc type, that item would actually appear in both locations. One, in the folder because we've saved it there, but two, in the filter because it meets the search criteria of that particular filter, the client matter and the doc type. And so folder packs would work just the same. Folder packs are basically building on the capabilities of creating folders, but they are still folder containers. Okay. And Karen, you said there was a second question?
There is, and I think that pretty much is going to be the answer. Do you have the ability then to perform an advanced search for documents that are saved in the folders or subfolders across all the workspaces then?
Yes, so I guess two things. One, if I was going to search, if I come to appeal and I start to search, obviously there's the idea that I can search within the appeal folder. Actually, let me go back to the one with the folder pack so we can show that. Where there's a subfolder. If I go to discovery, now I can search within discovery. If I go to my advanced search, I'll have the option to search the subfolders as well. And so I can basically perform my search that's within the folder structure. But I still, again, back to that dynamic nature of NetDocuments, I still can go back to list view and see a roll-up of everything that's in the workspace, or I could search at the workspace level and find anything across the entire workspace. All I'm basically relying on is the fact that it has the workspace attribute applied, client and matter in this case. So I can search within the folders. I can search across the workspace. It's not isolated in any way to where it's not contained within here.
Great. I think that takes care of the questions we have so far.
Okay, great. All righty. So just kind of going back here. So two resources that I've referenced here. One is just the NetDocuments support article with the details on folder packs, the overview of it, and then a blog with a little bit more details that we wrote here on our blog related to folder packs in that release. But those are two resources that are available for you if you want to go and learn a little bit more. But that pretty well covers it. So we're about 29 minutes in. Karen, I'm going to hand it back to you unless there are any other questions that come up.
Nope, no more questions. Do feel free to send those in to us if you do have any remaining questions. Ron, you did a great job. Thank you so much. And thanks to all of you for attending. If you were intrigued by Ron's presentation this afternoon and want to learn more about folder packs or have any other document management questions, I hope that you'll take advantage of our free 30-minute DMS consultation. You can just reply to the follow-up email I'm about to send that will include today's recording and the slide deck from Ron, and then I'll take care of the rest to get you all hooked up. We do have more DMS focus sessions coming up. You can see all of them by visiting affinityconsulting.com/webinars. And I'm excited to share that we'll be moving to the Zoom platform for webinars starting in January. So I hope you'll all come back and see the changes after the first of the year. Thank you, everyone. Please do share your feedback with us on the survey that follows. And I hope you have a safe and happy holiday. Thanks, Ron. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks all. Take care.
You too.